camp taking photos, and they said, we're BLM employees. And he says, okay, I would like you to identify yourself. I want some identification. And they said, well, we don't have to do that. And he said, no, you really do. He says, tell me who you are. So they showed their cards, and they did identify themselves as two BLM archaeologists. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, that's fine. He said, you guys have a job to do. You guys can, pretty much do as you need. But he said, in the future, he says, this is a pre-55 claim. He says, we do have surface rights. He says, in the future, please call the owner, or he says, come out here and knock on the door and just let me know you're out here so I know who you are. And, if you guys are out in the woods and you don't come back for a reason, that, if you guys get in trouble, I could help you guys out.
So then you start getting unexplained bureaucratic charges brought against you after that. And
kind of what happened was, instead of these guys saying, hey, that's very reasonable, they went back and they actually filed a complaint about the caretaker, and they basically said he threatened them. Mm-hmm. Which he did not. He has signed an affidavit of record that he did not do that. They basically stick the BLM special agent on him, and he is a very young guy, very hardworking. He's in his 20s. He actually took over as caretaker because he had some equipment at his mine actually stolen, and he kind of really didn't have a lot to do. So that's why he got together with George and Rick, and they brought him in there.
Let's talk about where we're almost out of time. Hang on, Kirby. We're almost out of time. Let's get to where we are currently at this point. They've hired legal counsel who has tried to ask the BLM why they're getting a cease and desist order. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, the BLM gave them a deadline of the 25th, which is a week from Saturday, to get out, and to basically remove all equipment, destroy all buildings, and fill in the mine tunnels. So tell us exactly where this is at the moment.
So that's exactly what happened. There was a lot of going back and forth, us requesting information, them not supplying it, Freedom of Information Act requests being ignored. So then they send this notice of noncompliance saying, you guys need to stop. We're going to do this if you don't. And so the owners, they consulted with an attorney. So that is where that situation is. And in the meantime, despite that, BLM continue to keep coming out there. They're basically sending law enforcement guys out. They're harassing the caretaker. They're calling him constantly saying, we want a meeting, we want a meeting. And he says, I don't have to meet with you. I did nothing wrong, and I have a right to, not speak to you in this country. And kind of where it went from there is one day George and the caretaker were on the mine, and there were two BLM law enforcement guys turned up, and one of them was a county deputy by the name of Jason Stanton, and he's a deputy. And we had actually, we've had meetings with the county sheriffs here. We've had a very good relationship with him. And he came out and he says, you guys got a stop order. He says, I'm here to give you another one. I do know that the owners, they really believe that they were there to engage in some nefarious activities, see if they were gone, and basically either seize property or burn property. And George, the owner, he tells the deputy, he says, that's fine if you want to give me a piece of paper. And he tells the deputy, he says, I want you to realize, he says, I'm doing my best here to follow the law as I know it. And he says, we really believe in the Constitution. And he says, we've really done and went out of our way to work with you and try to get information. And the deputy says, I have a very large problem with the Constitution. I have a big problem with that idea.
Oh, really? The deputy said that. Now, you got a new sheriff in town, right? You used to have a Sheriff Gilbertson. I remember he wrote a very long article about how the federal government was infringing on people's rights and how it was the duty of the sheriff to stand there and protect the people locally. But there was an election last November, and there's a new sheriff in town, right?
Yes, that's true. And and as you said, Gil Gilbertson, he was a very big supporter of the mining community. He still is. He is quite aware of the situation. He has been doing what he can to help the owners. So we do have a new sheriff, and we had actually met with him kind of before this all came to a head. He did come to one of our meetings, and he said, and he admits, he says, I really don't know a lot about this. He says, I don't know where I stand. He says, I would like to get educated. And we said, that's great. We're looking forward to, more discussions. And then this kind of happened where, he's in the middle of it. And my understanding is that he is actually doing his best to mediate this. And he has come out publicly and said, he has said very similar to Gil Gilbertson, that I will not tolerate people violating the rights and property of the local citizens that basically I am obligated to defend. So we're very happy about that.
So right now you're in a position, let's kind of sum up where you are right now. From what we've seen from Oath Keepers, who are in charge of security for the area, they are in a security position right now. This is not a standoff. The BLM has given a deadline, but so far there's been no moves towards that. The Oath Keepers are asking for people who can come and help to provide security to come to the area, but other than that, there is no kind of a conflict there. And I think it's a very calming thing to have people there to provide security. That, I think, prevents something like violence happening when there are people on both sides of the issue. But let's look at the bigger picture for just a moment, because we're just about out of time, Kirby. When I was looking at this, I went back into some of the archives of the area to see what was going on. I got some reports from the early 90s about how, this 20 years ago, how the BLM was really cracking down on existing mines. And I think it's important for people who are listening to this. A lot of people think of miners, they have a very negative view of them. They think they've seen some of the destructive practices of open pit mining. That's not what's going on here. This is very small miners who have been working this in a more of a traditional type of posture. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're actually working the property in a similar way to it would have been worked in, say, the 30s. You know, they have a small excavator to clean tunnels. They have a cabin. They have a very small mill. They can basically go in, extract rock, dig it up off the ground with a shovel, put it in an ore car, run it out there, and run it down to their mill and do things like that. And they have some larger equipment to maintain roads and obviously deal with, you know, large quantities of rock that may be left in piles that need moved.
Okay, so things really haven't changed from the articles that I was looking at 20 years ago. But I thought it was interesting to see this LA Times article from 1994. They talked to a guy, his name was Jeff Garcia, and he was a geologist from Berkeley, and he talked about how he had worked a mine there at that time in 1994. He'd worked it for 16 years, and basically they were making it impossible for him to continue operation. He had to pay a $300 permit because water was falling on his land and might cause runoff into the river, which of course other operations, farmers don't have to do that and shouldn't have to do that. And yet they give exemptions to large municipal areas. But I thought it was very interesting that they hit him with very stiff fines just because he had some sediment runoff. This was not the kind of heap leaching that some environmentalists have complained about that's been banned in some countries, where they basically create a large open pit, they excavate everything, they pulverize everything, and then pour cyanide over it. This is nothing at all like this. This is, as you pointed out, traditional mining done by small operators. This guy spent half of his year in Alaska, half of it in Oregon with his wife, who is also a geologist. He had a lot of respect for the land. And he said this, Kirby, he said, society seems to have this guilt about disturbing the land. They still go to their big parking lots and their supermarkets, but if they have a chance to get rid of their guilt and nail some little miner on the hill, they feel like they've done their part to save the world. I think people need to see this in the proper context. They need to understand that this is part of the government's operations to shut down everybody's business, whether you're a small-time miner or whether you're a small-time retailer or a small-time manufacturer. They want to get the people out of it. But there's something else on these lands where people have had mineral rights or grazing rights or lumber rights. There's another aspect to this, and I think we can see it in what's going on in Arizona, where Senator John McCain just ran through in the National Defense Authorization Act a process that is going to turn over an area that has recreational significance, it has historical significance to the Indians, and it has religious significance to the Indians who are there. And it was also protected in 1955, the same year that your stuff got grandfathered in. What they're going to do is, by turning it over to this foreign corporation, they're totally going to obliterate the area. This is not something where they're going in and just mining some minerals from underneath the surface. They're going to create a crater that can be seen from space. And this is what I think is going to happen. I want to get your opinion on this. This is what I think the end game is in all of these struggles, running the people off the land. Because when we were at the Bundy Ranch, he was the last rancher still in business. They had run everybody else out of business with phony endangered species claims. And of course, the desert tortoise that they were supposed to be protecting, they had rounded these things up, euthanized over 1,000 of them because they said they didn't have the money to feed them. Yet they were financing an army to come against the Bundy family and to come against people who would be on the land without their specific permission, attacking and assaulting people who are doing it. So when people go onto the BLM's land, they felt they had a right to assault and attack people, and yet when the BLM goes onto a gated property there in the Galice Mining District, they get very upset if they're even asked to provide identification.
I do want to clarify something there. It's actually not BLM's land. This is actually land that this is actually land that is administrated and managed by the United States government for the benefit of the American people.
I misspoke. Yes, that's a very good point. It's not their land.
Under the Constitution, the federal government is very limited in what it can own, and basically this is where the mining law came in and the Homestead Act came in, is that basically the government was required under the law to dispose of this land. And basically what that means is pass into private ownership and basically allow the average person to benefit from it and basically make a living and make some sort of life for himself from it, and in turn do something for the country. It's funny you mentioned Jeff Garcia. Jeff is actually a pretty good friend of ours. He is still there in Belize. He's still going strong. But you're right. It is exactly as he said. I remember a comment he made to me one time. He said, when you're in court with these people, he said, you realize you're the only one sitting there not getting paid that day.
Yeah, that's right. They starve you out. Thank you for correcting me. That
very right about that.
Yeah,
he's very, very right about that. And I am aware of the situation down there in Arizona with the Apache land, and that is not something that we support. I mean, obviously, we do support mining, and we recognize that we need the minerals, and our society we do utilize a lot of minerals. Almost everything we use is a mineral. It derives from it. Basically, we all always say, if it can't be grown, it must be mined. So we do need the minerals, but at the same time, most of us who are in the mining community.
But really, I think the issue, Kirby, is that they want to take it away from the small people who live in the community. They want to take the land away from the people who would manage it locally. And of course, that's the big issue out west as to who the land belongs to, who it should be, who the public lands should be managed by. And everybody is starting to wake up, I think, out west and say, these are public lands. They don't need to be managed by the federal government because they're doing a very poor job of it. And they are trying to expunge all of the individuals out of the area in an Agenda 21 kind of way, so they can turn this over to large corporations who will obliterate it for all uses that everybody has, completely destroy the area rather than use it responsibly. And I think if we want to have responsible use of the land, it is best done at the local level. So I think that's a very big movement. And when I said the BLM land, of course, that's the way the BLM is acting, as if it was their private property. And we need to understand that it isn't. And as you point out, there's constitutional cases to be made that the government doesn't have the right to keep this much land. And we all know that from a practical standpoint, it shouldn't be done in that way. Well, we're going to continue to follow this. We're out of time. We've gone quite a long ways on this interview, but we'll be in touch with you to see what happens. And of course, if anybody wants to support this operation, we will put the information on the video as to where they can make donations to the Oath Keepers who are providing security, or to the miners who have a large legal fight ahead of them. The Galice Mining District has a legal fight that they're asking for donations to establish their rights. We need to understand that if you don't have property rights that are recognized by the government, if they can take them from one person, if they can take them from the miners, or they can take them from the ranchers, they can take them from you, even if you just have a suburban home. So we need to all understand that this affects all of us. Any last comments, Kirby?
That's absolutely correct. And as we miners say here locally, if you don't know about property, you probably are property.
That's right.
Or you're going to lose it. So,
tell us how they can support your, where they can go to get information and to make a donation.
If people want to get information as far as what's going on at the mine and how they can help, they should go to Oath Keepers, JOCO, that's JOCO, oathkeepersjoco.com. And that is Josephine County Oath Keepers. They are the on-the-ground guys. They do have needs. If people want to support them with food and things of that nature, please go there, get in touch with their people. If you want to support the mine owners, please go to sugarpinemine.com, and that is the official website. You can also go to GaliceMining.com. That is our district site. Either one of those sites, we have a lot of information. If you go to sugarpinemine.com, you can send the miners a donation either by check directly to the owners, or you can contribute through PayPal through there.
All right, great.
And the thing I really want to reiterate is